Welcome to the Safe Business Agility Podcast. This is the place to get advice, stories, perspectives, and updates about safe and related topics to help you work differently and build the future. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. This week, we have the pleasure of hearing from Anand Murthy. Anand is a managing director at Gladwell Academy Asia, Safe Fellow, and Safe SPCT. He's been around the block, he's seen a lot, he's done a lot, and his insights, especially around mindset, values, and principles, are truly inspiring. I hope you enjoy this one with Anand. Let's get into it. So this one is a little catch up from Safe Summit. I'm sure many of you have noticed that we got a few episodes at Safe Summit, and by a few, I mean a lot. And my friend Anand, fortunately, we just didn't connect. So I promised, and here we are, making the time to talk now. So Anand, welcome. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for giving me a little bit of grace. I appreciate your forgiveness. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Adam. And I'm doing absolutely great by the grace of God.
Great. Well, and that's all we can ask for, right? I mean, it's been an interesting few months in the world. And I think the fact that we're all here and that we're all healthy it's by far the most important thing. So I'm definitely grateful for that as well. So Anand, will you do me a favor and tell the people who don't know you who you are? Because we've actually grown this audience pretty good. We are reaching outside of our safe community to the broader business community. So this is your 5 seconds of fame. Who are you?
Well, I'm a student for life. I've been studying, learning, and I think the toughest part is unlearning a few things that we have learned so far in our life. I am enjoying my journey as an SPCT, and as a Safe Fellow. I believe the common saying, the most famous saying in the movie Spiderman, with power comes more responsibility. I think with Safe Fellow, it's more responsibility now for me.
You know, and that's an interesting point. I think I've kind of noticed this trend over the years, not just in others, but also, myself. I remember when I first interviewed for the SPCT program, it was with Drew Dramello, and I'd known Drew for a lot of years, and I'd done a lot of work at that point. And when I took the role that I have now, I mean, I looked at my interview notes, right? Because who wouldn't? They're there. I looked. And one of Drew's points was really smart, very well experienced, maybe a little arrogant. And looking back, 100%, I was a little bit arrogant. And I think that's where a lot of folks are when they come into the SPCT program, right? And rightfully so, right? You've got a lot of experience. You've already beat a lot of people out to get an invitation to Immersion Week. But then as you go through the SPCT journey, there's a certain amount of humility that emerges. You're humbled a little bit. And it's not that our goal is to humble you. The goal is to just highlight the areas where you still have growth. And with that, I mean, our community is a pretty solid community. There's an ego or two, right? But, we all have done a lot of cool things. In the SPCT community, there's a lot of really talented, well-accomplished people. But then, as you mentioned, when you get into the fellow space, something even more interesting happens, right? There's definitely a humbleness, because I think the folks that are invited to join that community have done a lot, and they've accomplished a lot, and they've learned a lot. And the most important thing that they've learned through all of that is how much they don't know. And the more that you do and the more that you're exposed to, the more you realize you really don't know a lot. And I think that's a really mature state in mind, right? To go from this place where you feel very accomplished because of the things that you've done. And then the more that you grow in that space of expertise, you're constantly reminded that there's smarter people, things that you don't know. And it's kind of cool.
Yes, Adam. I think what I've realized is that if you have to go to a higher altitude, you need to have two important things: attitude and aptitude. And when you go to that altitude, you should never forget your aptitude and attitude. Often what I've seen is people, the moment they go to a higher altitude, they forget that there is a lot of thing to learn, and they become a bit arrogant as well. I think that is the first point of the fall. So I think what I have learned in my life is that I think you need to be humble. You need to be intelligent and humble, both. A combination that's quite difficult to exist. But if we can get that combination, I think we can be of greater help to the community and the society.
I totally agree. Another thing that I've found to be, I guess, a superpower is just relentless curiosity. So I think that comes with the things that you said, with being humble, seeking to understand, and always being curious, because no matter how many experiences we have, there's always something nuanced about the one ahead of us. And I think to just assume that we know how to fix the problem isn't always the best perspective, right? I mean, I think having that humility and having that curiosity is what really helps people to be successful and to gain those, I guess, just higher levels of enlightenment.
You're absolutely right. I think we need to be humble. And as you rightly said, we need to have curiosity. As Adam Grant says, we need to have a scientist mindset. Instead of believing that our opinion is right, he always says that come up with a hypothesis, validate your opinion, constantly validate your opinion, and then you learn, you get to know, what you do not know, and then start fill the gaps of what the realization of what you do not know. And then he says that makes us really more confident, and that increases our humility as well.
Sure. I think you touched on something there that is a really important thing when people start embracing this way of working that is often overlooked. And in some ways, it's counterintuitive to the way we've been taught to behave in business. And that's when you take a real scientific approach, right? And not, unfortunately, there's a lot of scientific studies that are pre-biased based on where the money's coming from. But if you're fortunate enough to be able to take a pure approach to the scientific method, as you said, you formulate that hypothesis and then you relentlessly try to disprove your hypothesis, because in breaking it, you get one step closer to the truth. And a lot of the things that we do, like if you look at an epic hypothesis statement, in the name alone is hypothesis. But the way that folks have been trained to behave in business is that you can't be wrong. And, when we see things like, safe is just waterfall in disguise and it's command and control, well, it's not really that, right? I think people sometimes either overlook or struggle to embrace the mindset, values, and principles that make all of this works.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People read the values and principles, and often people do not read. And I'll give you an example. For people, those who understand the game of cricket, it was in 1987 when the West Indies were playing against Pakistan. It was a quarterfinal match. The West Indies were two-time world champions. And it was the last ball, and the bowler came to bowl, and the non-striker ran to the wicket. The non-striker could have just knocked off the bails and West Indies could have won the game. But the bowler did not do that. He just stood on the pitch and asked the batsman to go back. And literally after the game, after that ball, the next ball, Pakistan won the quarterfinals and West Indies were eliminated. It was like everybody were cursing the bowler. Why didn't he knock off the bails? But he came back and said, that's not the core value of cricket. That's not the way how we need to play. And we remember him for many years. This happened in 1987 and I'm talking in 2023, I remember him. Same thing happened in 1986 when Diego Maradona won the World Cup for Argentina. And Michael Platini was one of the most talented football player in France. But you know what happened in 1989? They played an exhibition match where Maradona had a T-shirt which said, "Say no to drugs," and Platini had a T-shirt which said, "Say no to corruption." But 5 years later, you see what happened. Maradona died of drugs, and Michael Platini is still in the jail on corruption. Now, that's what is core values. At times, if we follow the core values, we have to undergo a pain, but the long-term gain that we get is very underestimated. So I think we need to learn the art of living the core values at any cost. And that can change the game for everybody.
Well, and what you just said is so true about everything in life, right? Any change that's worthwhile is painful, because anytime you undergo change, you're challenging yourself, either mentally, physically, or both. And it's not fun. And that's also why so many people give up, right? Because it's hard and we don't want to embrace the pain of changing, even though the result of having had change is usually so beneficial in all the ways, right? And I think that's a character thing for a lot of people, right? It does take discipline to undergo a change of any kind. And some people just aren't used to that discomfort, or they don't like it. I think it's probably human nature to resist that discomfort, right? Because, we're animals and we want to be comfortable. But then there's something that's really powerful in actively seeking the discomfort, because that's where growth takes place. If we sit here and we just enjoy the comfort, we become complacent, and then nothing good ever happens, right? Everything's just kind of fine in status quo, but we're not getting better. We're not really improving any aspects of our lives or of our character.
Very true, Adam. In the year 2018, 2019, I don't know how many times I flew to Europe and US. I was almost like every second week I was to be in the midair. And people were making fun of me, Adam, saying that the air hostess probably can recognize me because I've traveled so much. And my friends would say that even the airport security would allow me to go without any security check because I was such a frequent flyer. Now, if I sit back and look at those days, something that I did not enjoy was the journey. I used to sit in the flight and I used to feel like, wow, when did I reach the destination? See, there is start, there is end for everything. But I think what is more important for all of us is to enjoy the journey. And we lose so much of time in cribbing. Instead of that, if we can start enjoying it, that will make change much, much easy. It makes change easy. We start accepting things as is, and our resistance would reduce. And eventually we can make a big impact and we can be role models to others. I think this is a lesson that I have learned, saying that destinations are always there. But I think our important aspect here is to enjoy the journey. And that can make a lot of difference.
What are some of your most memorable transformation moments that you've had working with customers where some of this has really come to surface, whether it's, somebody really understanding why the values are important or changing the way that they approach people or work based on the things that it is that we value?
I think my very first one or two interactions that I've had with a particular business group, one of the very most decorated leader in an organization that spread across the globe. I remember this. So it was a first meeting. The senior leadership team had come from US. The consulting senior leadership had come from the US. And of course, we were all with him. So we went to a big meeting room. This man gave a big presentation. And one senior leader from the client organization took his diary, banged it on the table and said, all this safe doesn't work for us. And everybody looked at him and said, why? He said, what do you mean by saying that we should start without even knowing the requirements and design? How can we even start? All this doesn't work for us. That's what he banged his diary on the table and walked away. 1 year down the line, he was one of our most, I would say, the guy who was supporting safe transformation and talking about safe across the industry, across the organization was this guy. I think that gave me confidence that this transformation is a journey, and anybody who starts saying no can also finally accept and say that this is the way to do things. And this was probably one of my most interesting transformation. It's not about process transformation. It's not about a technology transformation. It's all about people transformation. I always say this, we need PPT for any transformation: people, process, and technology. Process and technology can only make your transformation easy, but it is people that makes it memorable. I remember this transformation a lot because we didn't just transform the process. We didn't just look at the technology. The leadership and the whole group had transformed. And it was so fun working with this group. It made life so easy for us to sink in the concepts of the Lean Agile principles to our guys. And it was like so easy. On the other hand, I also found another group that I was working where I found it extremely difficult even to tell people that PI planning has to be done in 2 days, not day and night. Because the team was in Bangalore and they had a client organization in Canada. So the PI planning would happen at evenings. And I gave them a couple of times, I wrote them a mail saying that this is not fair. You can't ask people to come at night. And third PI, when I really pushed them for 2.5 day PI planning, and when they said no, I walked out of the engagement. I said, this is not one of the core values that we are living. One of the core values was respect for people. And if you cannot do this, I will not be able to continue with the engagement. I think these are some of the things that I always remember about living core values, transforming people, and dealing with mindset. These are more tougher challenges than dealing with a process change, teaching Scrum. It's quite easy to tell them and help people understand. But changing of mindset and living those core values of tough times, I think these are some things that will make transformation successful.
Well, and I think having the courage to walk off of an engagement, I mean, that says a lot about your commitment to the mindset, values, and principles as well, right? I mean, if we see something that isn't working or that people are unwilling to change that contradicts the work that we do, I mean, it's a paycheck. but you have to have the courage to walk away. So that's really admirable. I think it's kind of funny how your story of the positive kind of mirrors one of my own. I remember I was working with a client in Wisconsin, and it was similar. I was teaching, I think at that point, Safe Scrum XP because it was pre-safe for teams. And there was this one gentleman, his name was Jay. I'll never forget him. And he was an engineer. In the beginning, he said, "This is stupid. It's never going to work, but I'm going to sit here because I have to." And at the end of the 2 days, he said, "You know what? I was wrong. This is going to work." And he became the biggest advocate in the entire company. And he was mindset, values, principles, police. And he actually, I remember he got frustrated with the Scrum Master because they were too focused on the process and not the behaviors. So he decided he's going to become a Scrum Master. And then he ended up being an engineering advocate across this multinational. And it was just so funny that, he went from being the strongest adversary in the room to the strongest advocate. And similar to you, that whole engagement ended up being, to this day, one of my favorite that I've ever done because, aside from Jay, all of the leaders from, the line managers all the way through the executive vice president in that business unit were aligned. And that was actually my first experience with business agility before we even had the word. I mean, we were talking about value streams and integrating business process and technology process, through one lens. That was a long time ago, but boy, that was so much fun. I'll never forget that. And it's cool how it parallels your story so much the same.
I think this is a quite common pattern, I believe, across the globe. You may see these kind of patterns emerging. And as you said, the guys who resist the most are the guys who advocate the most at the end of the day.
So, Anand, I want to ask you, what brought you to this kind of work? Because you've got a lot of passion. Your heart is, I've known you for a lot of years, and I know your heart's always be in the right place. But what is it about this line of work that drew you in? And what were you doing before this?
So I'll tell you a bit about my background.
I would love to hear about your background.
Yeah. So this is how I tell in most of my classes during a conversation. After I'd finished my engineering, I worked as a JE. Generally, people think JE stands for junior engineer, but actually it is jobless engineer. I did not have a job. So I found an ad in the newspaper about a position in my college, in the same college that I had studied. Then I went to my college, I spoke to my HOD and asked him that, I told him, look, I don't have a job and I would love teaching. I love teaching. So is there an opportunity for me to join the college? And he said, well, you can't expect big salary, but if you are interested, I would ask you to apply. So I formally applied. There was an interview. I was selected. And in a matter of 3 months, in the same college where I was a student, I was actually teaching. And that was something that gave me a lot of satisfaction. I spent a lot of time in the lab teaching students of how to, and I was very fond of and was very passionate about my electrical subject. So I used to spend a lot of time in the college, but what I realized that teaching is not an industrial experience. So I moved to a factory where I did a lot of work in terms of building electric motors. Then I moved to Deutsche Bank, where I was working as a software developer. Then I moved to services industry. For 2.5 years, I worked there. I loved the art of building browser-based apps. But I think the real break I got was when I was in HP. Then I joined HP. I spent a lot of time. I worked as a operations manager. I worked as a delivery manager. I worked as a project manager. But the biggest break I got was when I was asked to develop a product, a consumer product. And we did exactly what the Agile books said, don't do it. We exactly did that. The project was a big failure. That's when I thought, anyway, I have a teaching background. Why don't I teach people what not to do rather than telling what to do? Because everybody can tell what to do by reading a book. But the pain that I underwent in the project for 2.5 years, we slogged, but we couldn't sell even 1,000 pieces of our device. I decided to write blogs and tell what not to do. So I started to teach Agile Scrum in HP. I created a COE. I started to teach in HP, but eventually I couldn't influence much people. But I got an offer in Accenture. I moved to Accenture, and there was a medical organization where I became a consultant via Accenture. And there they really appreciated what I have done so far. And that is when I decided that if at all I would like to be something in life, I should be teaching SAFe. And when I saw SAFe, I was so fascinated by the principles, by the core values, principles, the mindset. It was like a dream come true for me to say, this is exactly what I wanted to teach, and somebody has already done it for me. So why don't I just pick up the book and start telling people what to do, what not to do, and stuff like that. Then I started teaching there, and eventually, I don't remember the name of the VP of Scaled Agile, the ex-VP of Scaled Agile. I met him once in Bangalore. He had come to Bangalore for some conference. We met, and suddenly he said, "Why don't you become an SPCT?" And I thought, well, that's a great idea, but how? And he said, you can choose any partner you want. Elko, my colleague in Gladwell, Netherlands, and me were actually working as a consultant at the same time. Elko was in Netherlands and I was in India. So I just asked Elko, is it possible? And Elko said, if you are ready, I am also ready. And that's how I joined Gladwell. The journey of SPCT started, very challenging journey. But I think every class you teach, every transformation that you do teaches you a lot of lessons. And ever since 2014, I joined that organization. I've never turned back, and I don't think I'll turn back either.
It's a pretty special group that you have there at Gladwell. I mean, Miranda is amazing, right? I mean, she's a pretty inspirational person.
She's a very inspirational, yes, but I love the courage she has to take risks and try new things. And that gives us a lot of independence back in India to try new things. We have tried to incorporate design thinking at many client places. Even before design thinking was incorporated in SAFe, we had already started to think about design thinking. Then we started to think about how to teach strategy to engineers. Well, strategy is generally taught about as a topic which is in the portfolio, but we all have to learn at all the levels of SAFe. So I started to think, what can I do to teach strategy in a very simple language that every engineer should understand? So I started to create my own content based on the books that I read, the videos that I looked at, and I created something called Introduction to Strategy and slowly connected the concepts of epics, features, everything into that concept. And now, after the team started to implement on SAFe, and when I used to teach this, they were able to connect the ideas of what an epic could look like. Why is an epic written like that? And that kind of gave them a lot of connect to the larger purpose. And these are some things that we can try without even asking Miranda. She doesn't even ask. And we say, okay, we'll try out new things. In the team, we try. We have failed multiple times. We have failed. But I think it's all a lesson that we learn in our journey of what not to do things, or what mistakes we have done, we should not repeat it again. So this is something fascinating that I've been trying in the last few years.
What would you recommend to someone who's maybe on the other side of the journey, who's maybe just beginning their consulting career? Maybe they're, a first-time SPC or change agent in their enterprise. Looking back at your career and the things that you thought you knew versus the things that you knew now, what advice would you offer those folks?
I think the first thing that I would ask them to get started with the mindset of being hungry. Stay foolish, stay hungry. That's the first thing. The moment you get to know that, moment you get a feeling that I know about this, you stop learning. So I always tell them, buy more books than what you can read. Download more videos than what you can actually read, where you can go through and learn from it. And I made a point that every day I need to watch a TED Talk. I mean, it's not about SAFe, it's not about lean, it's about something else, some different topic. I was reading a TED Talk, and I found a very interesting way of how in Norway, they actually showed people how much of small, tiny holes were there in the house because of which the electricity bill had gone up. So what they did was they went to every house in a locality, very closely observed the windows, found small holes. They took photographs, they measured the small holes, and they made a big balloon out of it and said, if we can accumulate all the holes that we see in this locality, the hole is so big. And that was kind of a game changer when everybody started to decide to plug in the holes. And that's what I thought, how visualization can change human behavior. So this video I didn't see from any Kanban or any other Agile books. I saw this. I started to use this. And what I also learned is that I tell people many a times, especially the freshers, We have the holy books of the world have passed wisdom over generation in the form of stories. Humans started to write 800 years back, and Microsoft PowerPoint is only 30 years or 20 years old. So I asked them, these young students, to reflect on them and say, what would be the most powerful way to communicate to people, inspire them with a vision, help them understand core values? It's not through PowerPoints, it's about stories. So I asked them, create your own toolkit of stories. Get ready with your toolkit. For every example, every line in our safe slide, you need to have a story to tell. And that's how people engagement starts. And that's how you can make an important vision. For example, vision. How do we communicate vision? How do we communicate the change? What is the architecture of telling a change? I think these are all hidden wisdom in the art of storytelling. So second point I want to tell them is learn the art of storytelling. And the third one is go deep into concepts. Don't read at 35,000 feet. You will not understand. You will not add value to the life of participants that we teach. If you really want to make a difference, you have to go in depth. So 3 important things: stay hungry, stay foolish, get curiosity, keep on learning. Second one is learn the art of storytelling. And the third one is we have to get deep in our subjects. I think these are the top 3 things I would like to say.
I think that's great advice. I think people focus way too much on the process and not enough on the mindset and also the why. And I really appreciate the advice to focus on storytelling. A lot of the times when we conduct interviews and they don't go well, whether it's a job interview or an SPCT interview or whatever it may be, that's the advice I always give people, is to really research the concept of a story arc and figure out how to tell your story in a clear and concise and compelling way. Right? If you sit here and tell me about yourself and it takes 30 minutes, for one, you lost me. I'm not listening, right? And then that only gives us a few minutes for the remainder of the conversation. And I'm not going to remember anything about your story. And if you think about the best storytellers in history, right, they're not long. The stories don't take an hour to tell. They're short and they're impactful, and figuring out how to use words well, right? To choose very impactful, meaningful words in as few words as possible. I mean, I think that's a gift. And, as I say that kind of, it reminds me of the difference between an undergraduate degree and an advanced program, right? Like I remember a lot of years ago, I would take like composition, maybe my first or second year of university. And we'd be given something like, hey, write a 2,500 word essay on this topic. And I could wait until the night before that paper was due and just use a lot of words, get it done and get a B, because it's easy to be verbose. Now, in graduate school, we were given a very complex topic and typically assigned the position that we didn't agree with. And we're asked to sell the idea on the front side of a single sheet of paper, double spaced. So you didn't have a lot of words. So you had to choose your words very carefully to be convincing. And that assignment was infinitely harder, right? We went through multiple revisions. It took time because, again, it takes a lot more effort to be clear, concise, and compelling.
You're right. Takes a lot of time.
Well, Anand, thank you for taking the time today. I mean, is there anything else you kind of want to share with people from your years of wisdom working in this way, educating others, and truthfully probably breaking a bunch of stuff too?
Let me tell you something. That we all say Agile is a mindset. How do you deal with mindset? So it's very important. So what I really learned is from a managing director of an Indian automobile company. His name is Rajiv Bajaj. And Rajiv Bajaj tells this beautiful story about what he learned from this medical treatment called homeopathy. So once Mr. Bajaj overdid yoga and sprained his back. He could not bend, he could not sit, he couldn't even stand under the shower and take a bath for about 10 minutes. The pain in his back would shoot up and he was forced to sleep. He went to the doctor. The doctor did a scan and an MRI scan and said, well, you need a surgery. And he was very afraid because he was just 36 years old. And he was afraid that if he undergoes a surgery and if things doesn't shape up, then he was afraid what would happen to him. So he did not go. His yoga teacher called him multiple times, but he was afraid to go because he knew the yoga teacher would make him bend, turn, and the pain would shoot up. But without finding any solution, one day he decided to go to the yoga teacher. He went to the yoga teacher, and the yoga teacher saw his condition, gave him 2 hours of focused exercise. And at the end of 2 hours, this man was upside down, standing on his head. And the yoga teacher said, keep the weight. He kept a weight of 10 kilograms of stone on his right leg and said, kick the weight. The pain would reduce. Surprisingly, after this 2 hours of exercise, the pain came down by about 30%. No medicine could give him this relief. And in 3 days, the pain had gone. He was literally in tears when he came back and said, what did you do, teacher, that the pain is gone forever? So teacher gave him a beautiful model, which I'm using today in all my transformations and which I'm telling it to everybody. He said, the doctor wanted to enable a function called walking by changing the structure of the body. But what holistic treatments like yoga would do is they will start with the function and the system would automatically adjust. That means any change, any complex system cannot go with structure to function. You change your entire org structure, you change your supply chain structure, you change your sales structure, you change your marketing structure, and then you tell to do SAFe. Doesn't work. SAFe exactly works like the implementation roadmap. Start with one train. Let others see the success. They pull the transformation. The entire system will come together to make it happen. So don't start with a structure to function. Always go from function to structure. Now, let me put that in the perspective of mindset. Mindset are 2 words. One is mind, which is your structure, set, which is your function. Don't start with the mind. We cannot control our own mind. What can we control about others' mind? I think we need to start with a set. Set a clear goal. Set aside all other impediments that will impede us from reaching the goal. Set a world-class solution to be built, and then get started. Now you see the mind will come together. So this is one thing that I would like to tell Adam about how to start to deal with mindset.
No, I really appreciate the time. That's good advice. And you've definitely given folks some meaningful things to think about. So thank you. If people want to find you and if they want to track you down, how can they do that?
Well, I'm available on WhatsApp, Signal. I can give you my number now. It's +91 98457 07457. So you can reach me at any time. In case I'm busy in any workshop or any meeting, I would always respond after my workshop, which I do every day. People talk to me, they send me messages, and I spend about 30 to 40 minutes every day talking to my students and some people who have worked with us. I keep on talking to them. So I'm always there to help people. So if you need help, let me know and I can do my best.
My friend, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the opportunity and all the best for all the folks.
Cheers.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The entire team at Scaled Agile is focused on helping you be better at work so that you can help your enterprise be more successful in the new age of business. If there's anything else we can do to help, if there are any other assets you'd like to see, content, podcast guests, just let us know. Also, please check out Safe Studio, where you'll find tools, toolkits, resources, videos, and so much more to help you be successful in the world of work. As always, if you appreciate this content, the greatest compliment you can give us is a referral to a friend or colleague. And if you feel so inclined, we do always appreciate those likes, comments, subscribes, and reviews on your podcast platform of choice. My name is Adam Mattis. Until next time, as they say, stay safe.